All right, we're going to dive into a pretty wild and honestly sensational theory that's been making the rounds online. It's all about the death of the Chinese celebrity Menglong. See, the official channels have gone completely silent on this, and that silence has created a vacuum, one that's been filled with some truly extraordinary claims. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly what these online sources are alleging.
So this is the mystery at the heart of it all. You have a huge public figure who dies under what seem to be very suspicious circumstances, and then nothing. Just crickets from the authorities. A complete wall of silence. Now, that kind of quiet is the perfect breeding ground for speculation. And what's bubbled up to the surface is this staggering story of power, high-level politics, and, well, alleged conspiracy.
Okay, so where does all this start? Well, the story goes that the first major piece of this puzzle came from an email. The person who sent it claims that a family member of theirs works high up inside Beijing's public security system. And this isn't framed as just some random gossip, right? It's being presented as an inside look at how things really work over there. And this is really the foundation of the whole claim. The insider says that because there's so much pressure to solve every single case, we're talking 100% solve rate, covering up a murder in Beijing is basically impossible. It would be total career suicide for any official involved. But, and this is a huge but, there is one very specific, very powerful exception to that rule. So according to this insider, there are two, and only two, conditions that have to be met for a cover-up like this to happen. First, the person who did it has to be so powerful, so connected to the absolute peak of the Chinese Communist Party that nobody would ever dare to investigate them. And second, the way it's done has to give everyone plausible deniability. It has to be designed to look like nothing more than a horrible, tragic accident. Now, this is where things start to get way more specific. If that first source laid out the how, a second, even more shocking source claims to know the who. And look, I have to be super clear here. These are completely unverified allegations. They come from an anonymous source who is only described as having a special background. This is where the whole theory just explodes, because this source, they don't just offer a vague idea. They drop a list. A specific list of 8 individuals they claim are the masterminds behind the whole thing. And there they are, the 8 names put forward by this source. Now, to most of us, these names probably don't mean a whole lot on their own, but the allegation is that these aren't just any people. They're all what you'd call princelings, or red second and third generation descendants. What that means is these are the kids and grandkids of China's most powerful and historic revolutionary families. We're talking about the absolute top tier of the political elite. So to really get your head around just how massive this allegation is, you have to connect the dots. You have to look at their family ties. Because the real power of this conspiracy theory, the thing that makes it so explosive, isn't really about the individuals themselves. It's about the powerful families they supposedly represent. I mean, just look at this web of connections. According to the source, this list of 8 people connects back to 6 of the most powerful political families in modern Chinese history. You've got descendants of foundational figures like Deng Xiaoping, former top leaders like Jiang Zemin, and even relatives of the current leadership. The core allegation here is that this was a conflict at the very, very top of China's elite. Which, of course, leads to the billion-dollar question, why? I mean, if this unbelievable theory were true, what on earth could possibly be the motive for a conspiracy this big involving the descendants of China's most powerful families? Well, the source paints a picture of a really bitter internal power struggle. The theory goes something like this. President Xi's huge anti-corruption campaigns, while maybe popular with the public, really hurt the financial interests and the political power of these other elite families. And this allegedly created this resentful alliance between the descendants of the Wang, Bo, Deng, and Jiang families, all of them supposedly holding a grudge and looking for a way to hit back. So where does Menglong fit into all this high-level political drama? Well, according to the source, he wasn't a player in the game. He was basically a pawn who got caught in the middle. The claim is that he somehow got his hands on some deeply compromising evidence. He supposedly never planned to use it. It was just an insurance policy, for his own protection. But just having it, just possessing that information made him a threat. A threat that, according to this theory, had to be taken off the board. But wait, the theory doesn't even stop there. The source adds a few more final layers to this whole alleged conspiracy, which makes it even more twisted and, in their view, pretty much impossible to ever actually prove. So, here is how the final pieces supposedly fit together. First, the 8 masterminds, they didn't get their hands dirty. Nope. The source claims the act was carried out by 6 of their bodyguards, which creates distance and deniability. They also allege that other names you might see floating around online are just distractions, decoys to throw people off the scent. And finally, they state specifically that he was pushed from a building. And this quote from the source, wow, it just sums up the entire deeply cynical outlook of this whole theory. It's a claim that basically says the powers involved here are so immense, the system is so broken, that this case is doomed from the very beginning. It's destined to become a permanent mystery, an unsolved crime with no official truth and absolutely no justice. And that really brings us full circle, doesn't it? This entire elaborate and again, totally unverified story, a story of elite feuds, secret evidence, untouchable villains. It exists and it spreads for one main reason: the absolute silence from official sources. And it leaves all of us with a really important question to think about. When the people in charge say nothing, what kind of stories do we end up telling ourselves just to make sense of it all?